Think of this. If you live to the age of 80 and you've had a normal social life, you work, you go shopping, you visit friends and family, you find yourself going on excursions and vacations, well then you have a 100% chance that you have come in contact with a murderer. Cryptids and monsters and paranormal beings cannot hold a candle to the scariness of the human mind. Since the dawn of humanity, humans are the deadliest creatures that walk the face of the earth. Putting aside wars and crimes of passion, some people enjoy and relish in their psychotic abilities to take more than one human life. The birth of a serial killer, many known infamously through headlines and television and other media outlets. Tonight, we take a look at some of the most disturbing and notorious serial killers, but not to glorify their name or promote the idea, but to rather understand the complexities of where the human mind has gone wrong. And with all due respect, the victims, we keep them in our heart, for they are the unsung hero in these stories. Join us tonight for Serial-ously Disturbed.
The idea of a creature larger than a gorilla with an odor like a skunk might seem far-fetched.
From the beginning of his time on Earth, man has always been fascinated by monsters, real or imagined.
The outside world is very judgmental about these things, with many people not believing in them whatsoever.
Cloaked in secrecy, they show up without warning, state their business, then vanish as quickly as they appear.
They only land in isolated places. They have taken people, I believe. They do have technology.
But the idea is if enough people focus on something, like thousands and thousands of people focus their mind on something and the image, in a very strange way, they can kind of create a real-world version of the fictional entity.
Fact, fantasy, and history have come together to tease the imagination.
That the truth will out, and that no one lie can live forever.
Welcome to SuperNRML. You're listening to SuperNRML, Super NRML. I'm Sean the Fork Chop Forker, and tonight we have a full house with us, and not the one with Aunt Becky because, well, she's doing time, but I've got Vance Nesbitt, I've got Maz Adams, and James Baker, guys, all in the house. Not one person on assignment this week. Man, feels like old times, doesn't it?
Yes, it is. Just like the old days. How long ago was the old days? A couple of weeks, huh?
It's been a while.
I believe so.
What day is it today?
Thursday?
It's
Tuesday, Wednesday.
It's Friday.
Oh boy.
It's Friday. It's one of those days.
Sorry.
But anyhow,
sorry. I'll ask you guys easier questions next time.
Guys, it's a podcast. It doesn't matter when anybody listens.
That's true.
Stop
That's true.
making sense, damn it. Vance, I told you about that. But I'm happy that we have James Baker with us tonight because he's been absent on assignment, and well, we should get a soundbite from him as to where he's been lately. I know he was on a beach somewhere, and I heard he got kicked off Easter Island for doing something with a moa that is just not quite proper.
They were really good head.
Oh gosh, and there it is. All right, Easter Island heads. That's a show for another time. But guys, tonight, well, we really got a disturbing show, don't we? The show tonight, Serial-ously Disturbed, and this is our third attempt at recording this show. And, man, it's going to be a good one. I don't know about you, but I picked a killer.
I think we all picked killers. That was the point of the show, Sean. Did you not get the memo 7 months ago?
No, I didn't. You know me. I write the memos. I don't read them.
Vance and I both made up a killer, so.
Did you?
No.
Well, you did, actually. The last time we recorded this, we had to come up with a killer, remember?
I barely remember.
I remembered it. It was fun.
Oh, that was sweet. Thank you for doing that.
It was quite the adventurous game. Guys, I don't know who wants to go first tonight. We could paper, rock, scissors, whatever we need to do to get this ball rolling. Because we've got 4 killers, all varying in their level of infamy. It's really going to be something else. I think we got some 4 solid wins here. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into it. I just wanted to start by saying, on this show, we've been doing a lot of things that are questionable if they exist or not, monsters in our minds. But this will be the first time where we're actually examining 100% undeniable monsters.
Absolutely.
So, and, we don't condone it, but it's definitely, we can't deny that it's interesting to talk about. There's a million podcasts that discuss this topic, and it's human nature. And so it's definitely interesting to dissect. So I will go first, I guess, then. So I'm just going to give a brief little rundown on the person I chose. And I'm sure that some of the listeners will be able to learn about people they may not have known before. So we all know some of the more famous serial killers. So I picked one that's maybe a little less well known. His name is Sean Vincent Gillis, and he was a serial killer from basically the late 90s through the early-ish 2000s in Louisiana. And during this time, actually, Sean, you might like him, not as a human being, but he was a huge nerd, big Star Trek fan, went to a lot of conventions. Just one of those normal kind of soft-spoken dudes that people were shocked to hear that he did this. But when he was killing in Louisiana, there were actually multiple serial killers. I forget the exact number. There's something like 6 or 7 at the time. And one most notably that some of these killings at first they kind of attributed to, but then upon further examination, it didn't quite fit that mold. And this guy, basically, he lived a double life. One of the funniest stories was his downfall, which I'll get to the killings in a second, but his eventual downfall, he was busted while he was in bed with his girlfriend. He lived with his girlfriend in his mother's house. His mother had left him her house. It was kind of dilapidated. And when the cops busted in, he was in bed with her, and he just said, "Sorry, honey bunny," which is probably the whitest, silliest, most benign thing you could think of serial killer to say. But he definitely was a deranged guy. When he was captured, he really reveled in being interviewed and talking about it. You'll see there's 2 kinds of schools of serial killers. There's those that deny and just want to do their thing, and even when they're caught, they don't admit it. And then there are those that love taunting the cops and revel in it. But basically, when this guy got started, it was with I believe an 80-something-year-old woman who he had tried to rape, and he ended up slashing her throat and stabbing her 50 times. And that kind of began, and then he went a few years before killing again, and he started picking up on a lot of prostitutes, people kind of forgotten by society, which is a common trend within serial killers. And what actually led to his downfall was there were tire tracks found near one of the bodies. And I'm not going to give specifics because I definitely think if people are interested, they should go look up stuff. So I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of it, but there were tire tracks found by a body, and the tire tracks were very rare, and they went through and they matched them up, interviewed everybody. Most people that had the tires were willing to submit to DNA. Unfortunately, he did not. And one of the prior victims, they had found, I believe, a full hair, a pubic hair in the victim's mouth. So they had the DNA. It had not matched anybody. So once they called this guy in, they saw something wasn't kosher, so to speak, with him. And they're like, we're pretty sure we got our guy. And they ran the DNA, and it matched. And once they started questioning him and saying the jig is up, I mean, you couldn't shut the guy up. And he had some crazy excuses at first before they confirmed the DNA. there was one of the victims he knew, and he said, I knew her. And he claimed, like, oh, if you find blood in my car, my girlfriend once had a terrible period, and it was like a massacre in there. And then, when they said, well, how did the blood get in the back seat? He said, oh, I might have had the window open, and the blood might have gone out through the front window and in through the back. And they're like, this guy's ridiculous. We know he's full of shit. And he was just like the ultimate double life. His wife his girlfriend had no idea any of this stuff was going on. And as he was killing, he was progressing more and more as far as like cutting off limbs and just getting more and more gruesome. I mean, he did crazy stuff. He had one of his victims, he had said she had such beautiful legs, so he literally cut her legs off to take them because he just wanted them. And there was another one who he loved her hands, so he actually cut one of her hands off and painted the nails of the cut off hands, or fingernails of the cut off hand. And there's what's even crazier is after all this was said and done, his girlfriend continued to live in that house, even though these people were butchered. Literally, one of them was butchered in the kitchen and cut up. They were able to keep the car. She kept the car that he was transporting bodies in. There was one time when he even drove in the car with her, and there was a body in the trunk. But he eventually got caught. He didn't really go with the fight. And, it's just one of those more modern-day serial killers, which is interesting because the more that time goes on, the less and less serial killers we see, which I'm sure we'll dive into later.
That was smack dab into what Vance and I were talking about before he came on air, wasn't it, Vance?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think I had mentioned to you earlier that there was a gentleman that just this past Wednesday, southern Detroit, serial killer, age 40, and of course, he was eventually cornered by police once they tracked him down, and he ended up trying to take his own life and is now in critical condition. And that is the current status of him right now. And we'll give more details to that. But these things still continue to this day. My question was a little while ago is, why is that cultural change shift so much from the notorious household name serial killer as opposed to today, where we really don't have the household names as much? But that doesn't mean there aren't serial killers. They're still out there. They're still doing their business, and I can darn well guarantee it's probably happening now while we're doing this show.
I was going to say, I think part of it is just social media and news. Everything is news now. We're constantly hooked into the news network in one way or another, whereas before things literally captivated the country. You'd have one major news story at a time, and now it's kind of like we can't even have something be big for a long time until the next thing comes up. So I think that might play part of it.
I think a part to that is the fact that we're just desensitized to it. I mean, you have years now, like the 60s, 70s, where serial killers were becoming like you said, Maz, were a real serious media event. It wasn't just a News at 11 story. It was News at 11, 12, 6 a.m., Good Morning America, whatever you watched. It was everywhere, right? And now we've seen so many terrible, horrifying things happen. What do you think? What's really disturbing to people anymore? That's a question I have. Like, where's the shock and awe in it? And I think you had guys like Sean there, and you have guys like Donald Gaskins that I'm going to talk about. Some people that did some really terrible, heinous things at the time. Like we talk about Ed Gein. Ed Gein didn't kill that many people. He just did some pretty terribly screwed up things in the amount of time he killed these many people. And it's these horrifying acts and these shocking acts that these people commit that I think overshadow initial reasoning that, hey, they just killed a human being. Killing a human being is one thing. When you kill a human being and you cut his face off and wear it, or, chop him up and put him in the blender, like that's pretty vicious.
No, and to go back to Maz's point that the girlfriend continued to stay in the house, well, let's take a broader look at that whole scenario to begin with. An individual that is cutting off hands to paint the nails is not right just in that act, but is not right in any daily activity. The behavior has got to be a little bit quirky. And in order to attract a spouse, she's got to be a little bit quirky too. And, maybe she saw nothing uncomfortable about staying in that house. And people of that nature may attract to each other because they're thinking so far outside the box in a demented way that they attract each other. And it's very possible she did not think of that as being unusual, where us normal people would say, what's the matter with you? They don't know what's the matter with them. This is perfectly normal to do this.
Well, Vance, I was just going to say, you hit the nail on the head, because they actually asked her, why are you still here, knowing that all this stuff happened? And her response was, it's just a house. She said it's no different than any place where there have been wars fought and people still live in certain places. So to her, she wasn't fazed by it. She said, I can't blame the house for what he did. And, she definitely was a little off the beaten path. And another aspect I didn't bring up was he definitely was turned on by this. He had talked about, always thinking about, having sex with his mom growing up. And he never was physical with his girlfriend. And she had said that he didn't believe in it. He felt like it was, inappropriate. So it's just crazy to think that these people can literally live with somebody and somebody be so oblivious when all the signs are in front of your face.
Or it's just ignored, one or the other.
Absolutely. It could be, ignorance is bliss. Don't ask, don't tell kind of thing.
Very much so.
She might also have had some other issues going on, and as far as keeping the house, it's all about location.
I think the real estate market might have plunged a little in that area.
Yeah.
It's got 3 bedrooms, 7 heads. It's nice view.
Like a lot of times, like me and Forker have had this discussion about, just because we work in the job we do, we see people all day. And a lot of times you just see that like certain groups gravitate towards other. Maybe she was damaged in one way, that she was okay that he didn't want to touch her. Maybe she was one of those people that just had to have somebody with her, but didn't really care what they were about. At the end of the day, she just said, okay, whatever, this is what happened, and I'm going to go. I wonder if it went on that long that she didn't have an inkling of what was going on, because, read the reports and read different news stories, and then she would put some of it physically together.
Well, those are all fair points. Who knows? Like Vance alluded to, maybe it's not that she didn't know. Maybe it's just that she didn't want to know or didn't care. But she got a house out of it. She was comfortable, and sometimes what it's easy to see when you're outside the eye of the hurricane, and not so much when you're inside it.
I wonder how she was exonerated from having any activity in any of this. If it all was based on DNA only.
Yeah, he confessed. They had multiple DNA matches. She apparently was none the wiser. I don't know in any case, from a legal standpoint. I guess there was no ties whatsoever. Or, I couldn't even tell you what they would do if anybody had a significant other that was a murderer. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an interesting point, and I'll bring up mine, but I was kind of interested in Baker's take in what has taken a look at as far as any kind of serial killer or his killer of choice, I guess is how I should phrase that. What's your killer of choice, Baker?
Mine was H.H. Holmes. Had to do with the fact that, he was just, a con artist, thief in general, and then basically he confessed to killing 27 people, but they assessed that he may have killed up to 200. That's if you ever watched American Horror Story, where they're talking about the hotel, that's kind of where they got most of the ideas from. That was him. He would basically, hire contractors, hire all kinds of people. So like you said, people that people wouldn't notice right away missing. And then at some point they would just disappear and nobody would be like, oh yeah, he's just not here anymore. Or he got deported or something happened, And, back then, it's not as bad as it is now. Like now you have more of a cyber footprint, but back then there were people that would leave from one part of the country and spring up in another part of the country, and it'd be as if they could just have a brand new life. They would say they were a doctor or a dentist or whatever it was, and then they would put up false documents and show up somewhere else as a completely other person. And the only reason they would catch them is because somebody who happened to know them from the past randomly ran into them.
You bring up another good point, which is a common thread amongst serial killers, is that a lot of their victims are considered to be those that are insignificant and would not be recognized if they went missing. And those are the targets that so many serial killers do go after. How many numbers of them were taking out prostitutes? Well, a lot of prostitutes, were homeless or were bouncing from address to address and, looking for support wherever, and they were hard to keep track of. Unlike today, like Baker brought up with a cyber footprint, most everybody has a cellular device, and you can usually track where they're at. But, keep in mind with H.H. Holmes, he died in 1896. So we're talking an era where there was zero technology as far as that goes. And you had to trust the person on their word. And a lot of people, were looking to make money back then. This is a newly developed country still, and looking for work wherever you could find work. And, he took advantage of that. And it's this social disease that seems to not stop. We're all worried about the coronavirus, but in my opinion, serial killers probably take more lives than the coronavirus will take. But what's your serial killer of choice, Sean?
Oh, well, I chose, and I talked to you guys the last time we did this, I chose two. The Green River Killer, but I thought maybe that's a little bit too contemporary for my liking, and I wanted to go with somebody who wasn't as infamous as the other ones. And maybe to some people he is, but he was not somebody I heard of until I went and did a little research on him. And his name is Donald Henry Pee Wee Gaskins Jr. That's a hell of a name there. Pee Wee Gaskins. He was only 5'2", weighed 130 pounds, hence the nickname Pee Wee. But don't let the nickname fool you. He was not a nice guy whatsoever. He was born the last of a bastard children. Like, I don't think any of his parents had, any of his siblings had a dad either. They made a good point in this article to really preface it with all the abuse and neglect he suffered as a kid. When he was like 1 year old, he drank a bottle of kerosene, guys, if you can imagine that, which caused him to have convulsions. Nobody had much interest in him, and the fact he didn't even realize what his first name was until it was read in the court docket for his first crime spree, upon which him and a group of other younger delinquents committed robberies, assaults, and a gang rape. So you can tell already from the start he had a great upbringing and was ready to go. When he was in prison, unfortunately, institutional rape was not uncommon back then, still not that uncommon, but he had a real hard time adjusting to life in there. He was released at 18. He started, this path of just really bad behavior. He was in and out of jail several times before his last stint, which he was given the electric chair. Now, he claims, guys, to have killed, he's been convicted of 9, but he claimed to have killed 110 people, which would make him one of the most prolific serial killers in the United States. That's a pretty high body count. And it was very, sexual torture, murder, a lot of coastal killings. And he didn't, at some points, he didn't discriminate between gender in his stories. And like a lot of serial killers, you have to watch out between what was real and what was claimed, because as Maz alluded to earlier, there are types of serial killers who would just take a kill for the credit, and then there are some that actually did it. But with him, because of how violent he was, I wouldn't be surprised if he killed that many people.
Yeah, and that's just terrifying to think about to begin with.
I mean, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty and the dirt of the terrible things that he did. Killed hitchhikers. He did kill a couple people in prison. In fact, I'll tell you this, the last kill he took was while he was on death row. The son of an elderly couple that were the son of an elderly couple that were killed by another inmate on death row, hired Gaskins to kill the inmate. Mm-hmm. And what he did was created a prison radio, used it to communicate between the cells, and he had laced it with C4. And when they got the inmate to put the radio up to his ear at the, coordinated time, he blew the radio and killed him. And this is what he said. He goes, the last thing he heard was me laughing. So this isn't a guy that had a lot of remorse for what he did.
But isn't it crazy that a demented, and I'll use the word demented, construct of the human mind or the brain to be able to do this to other people, but yet be smart enough to be able to create such intricate devices to be able to do that?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
To me, that I'm completely dumbfounded. I don't understand where the technology and the thought process is all developed at, and I know that science takes a look at this, and that's probably the best thing that any serial killer once is executed. Let's examine the brain. Let's find out what's wrong and work on that problem and learn to recognize these signs before they happen again. The problem is we're just not that far scientifically yet, unless you take a look at something like Minority Report, where who knows what technology you'll be able to advance to, but you can't also convict somebody of something they have not done yet. But it's rather interesting to at least be able to try to curb it through science, but to be able to have the mindset to be so destructive use of technology and yet still be demented enough to be able to do heinous things to other human beings and end their life.
In that particular case, though, I think that all lands on focus. Like, I work with people with disabilities or people with autism. They can't have a regular conversation with you, but they can tell you every stat for a baseball card. They can tell you how to put together a radio. They can tell you to do 50 other things that an average person would not hold together in their brain. But then when it comes to a simple thing like how to make a sandwich, they got a clue. There's a drive there. That's something that interests them. Therefore, they learn to what they need.
And you're talking about the ability of one's mind to, though you may not be socially cognizant or aware of what you're doing, the fundamentals and the basics of something that gives you a base. Is that what you're saying, Baker?
And some of these killers, the thing is what you don't realize is they learn their craft as they go along. So there may be killers you never knew of just because they were a random homeless guy got killed. Or, I'm sure Jack the Ripper's first, there may have been more. Or even you look at Dahmer and some of the other ones, even Ted Bundy. Some of Ted Bundy's first kills were just random. And he learned how not to get caught to a degree. And then they get arrogant or sloppy, and then they're boom. The police start watching them.
Well, that's what this Gaskins guy, he didn't even use the same MO to kill these people. Like he did, I really feel like they were in the moment rage killings. Like he just lost all control and impulse and just decided, you know what, I'm done, I'm going to snuff them out. And there was sexual motivation behind it as well, as we see in so many of these serial killer issues. And, to talk back to your point, Vance, with the, being able to study the mind, they're doing so much work with this, and a lot of times they're able to find so much from the deceased brain of these individuals. And I use sports for an example, right? Football.
Like
a
CTE?
big one. Yeah, CTE. Happy Maz, one of our favorite sports, professional wrestling, right? Another terrible thing that happened, but people that are ordinarily normal people one day start going on this path of madness. Like, sometimes you got to wonder if there is a physical or physiological component to it. And as we do more research and study into it, this is where the technology is evolving. We might be able to answer more answers. Hopefully it's never to the point of Minority Report. I feel like something along those lines, Vance, would be, I think I'd be arraigned for murder if that was the case. I can't tell you how many times, somebody cuts you off in the street. I want to kill that, or let me get my hands on that SOB. Like that stuff, thought crimes become, I don't think it's abnormal to have the thought the thought to kill
No.
somebody. I think it's normal when you act on it, you know?
100%.
Yeah, when your moral compass is completely broken,
Yes.
that's where the problem is at. And, you know, to go back just a little bit, I'll slide that dial back just a little bit into the conversation. Our good friend Shannon LeGros went to Fox Hollow Farm a few years ago regarding Herb Baumeister. And I found it really fascinating because she shared a video with all of us of how outraged he was. Now, he was in the middle of a killing spree of young men, and he killed quite a few of them on his property of Fox Hollow Farm. But he was completely outraged when he was driving home and he saw that the road crew repainting lines on the highway actually sprayed over a dead raccoon on the side of the road. And he was completely outraged and called the media. And the media came out there and interviewed him on the side of the road on how outrageous they were to have a raccoon be decimated with paint. And they couldn't even move it off to the side of the road. But yet here he is in the middle of this killing spree and didn't care what he did with the bodies. He would dismember.
Yeah.
You know, that's the moral compass that is completely twisted and broken. And we need to find where that moral compass is in the brain in order to try to fix it before there is that problem.
You know, one of the things I'm kind of glad we didn't do was get into the nitty-gritty and, like, the details of the murder, because they're grotesque, right? And they're morbid, and I don't know if we need to sensationalize it any more than it already has, right?
No.
And we're going to be talking about one guy in just a minute here, Vance, that, you know, really epitomizes evil, and how one's social graces can, you know, obscure us from the reality of who that person really is. And the sociology, and not just the psychology, but like how they mold and fit in some of these guys into everyday life is just outrageous. Ted Bundy is the perfect example of that, right?
All right.
What a charmer.
Yep.
And he managed to do some pretty, you know, hellacious things, just like, well, the guy you're going to talk about here in just a minute. Again, you know, there's something to be said for maybe the innate talents that these guys possess, the charisma factor, the maybe a slight element of, I don't want to say not caring, but, you know, kind of the reason they got away with it for so long is because they didn't try to cover it up so well.
Well, it's, you know, it's the argument of a psychopath versus a sociopath. You know, like a Dexter is a sociopath, somebody who can blend in so well like a chameleon and fake human emotions. And a lot of these guys were very charismatic, but then you have somebody like Pee-wee, you know, Mr. Gaskins, who, you know, you describe how people, you know, spoke of him. And if I'm not mistaken, because I actually listened to something about him, like even before we did our first recording, was he married like multiple times also?
Yeah, I believe so.
Right? Like multiple times. And he's the type of guy that like people aren't surprised by. Whereas the one I was talking about, you know, Sean Gillis, people are like, oh, I couldn't believe it. You know, such a nerd, such a quiet guy, you know, seemed like a nice guy. So that's what we were talking about before. But then you do still have those stereotypical, like, oh, no, yeah, that makes sense. I totally get it.
And, you know, and that's the other thing. Like a guy like Gaskins, right, goes from being raped and owned in prison to being like one of the meanest men in the correctional system.
And they actually called him, that was one of his nicknames, like the meanest man in America.
Yeah, like he's the meanest man. It's terrible.
It's definitely, you definitely have the Napoleon syndrome, and then on top of that, like you said, being sexually brutalized and assaulted, you want to assert your dominance and be the big man on the totem pole. So it was like he already had a chip on his shoulder from his size, from his upbringing, and then on top of that, you get taken advantage of. So it was a perfect storm for this spree that he went on.
Absolutely. And you know, again, that institutional, I mean, he committed a sexual crime before he was in prison, but even so, there was a lot of sexual brutality in a lot of his other crimes, which is, you know, just, it's a sad story. And not that you feel remorse for him, right? Because he did some pretty terrible things. But sometimes you often wonder, had he had a different chance at something in life, would he turned out a different way?
Well, I think that's a really good point, because the fact that it's hard for people like us to have any sympathy. I understand religion says, make sure you forgive all. But to have sympathy for somebody like that, because so much of this starts at young childhood. And we have found this time and time again where serial killers were brought up in a really twisted household to begin with. And that's where the normalcy of the whole thing comes in. I think that's where the breaking of the moral compass comes in at, is through, the raising through childhood. And if they see violence and abuse and the curiosity of starting to kill animals and getting the sensation from it, I don't know that it just all of a sudden starts. I think it has to be fed from somewhere first in order to break that moral compass.
I think it has to be that moral decrepity has to be, for lack of a better word, nurtured in some way, right? Well, I think of people that grown up with really terrible childhoods. Dave Peltzer, if you remember the book A Child Called It, this guy lived through some really traumatic, horrifying childhood conditions, being forced to drink bleach, slept in the basement, not allowed to have normal human activities. He didn't grow up to be a serial killer.
Right.
So I think at some point you also make that choice.
Oh.
That every day we all have that option. I'm really pissed off right now. This could be the moment I choke the old lady at the checkout counter for counting her coupons and taking an extra 5 minutes of my day. Or, you know what? It's just 5 minutes. I'll be fine. We're all one moment away from that. People with an issue that become serial killers, I think they either lack that or they just finally give in and do it.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think that it's almost like a gene that's dormant and that it comes out, that something is a catalyst for it. Like you said, if everybody who was raped or everybody who had a tough childhood, was a killer, then everybody would be a killer. There'd be nobody left in America. It's kind of frustrating and angering too when you watch in courts and they use that as an excuse. And it's like, why do you have a killer and then you have the sibling who are both raised under the same circumstances, and one is an upstanding citizen and the other one is killed 7 people.
Yeah.
So there's definitely more to it, and I'm not taking away from the fact that these people might have gone through traumatic experiences, and that in itself is wrong, but it doesn't condone the fact for what they did. That you have to take responsibility for what you do, and there's a hunger or a need there that we may not ever understand, or science may not ever understand.
That's the fascinating part about all this, is where it goes and how does the future of this field, criminology, sociology. You got shows like Mindhunter on Netflix. Do you guys watch that at all?
I did, yeah. Unfortunately, I heard that it may not be finishing up, but it's a great show.
It's fantastic.
It's a great show.
Right.
Yeah.
And it shows like that really kind of give you a little bit of appreciation of what went in to the whole criminal profiling system. But it's still a lot of work that needs to be done. It's far from perfect. And with the advent of this information getting out into people's fingertips, the ease of access to this, some of our next serial killers may literally be undetectable for some time. We put the information out there, how to evade this, how to get away with this, how to properly cover up your tracks, especially people that go to school for this stuff. The information's out there. Man, being a serial killer may now literally be easier than it ever has in the past.
But is the rising technology and education proportional to the rise of technology and education to catch these people?
Yes, I agree.
That's
I do. I
think
agree
it's
with
harder
that.
than ever. That's why we don't see them anymore.
Well, that and again, our desensitization to what violence actually is.
Right.
Right. Some things just aren't heinous like they used to be. I mean, I think inside all our guts, we know, man, that's terrible. But you have to admit, sometimes when you hear one of these stories and you compare it to Halloween, right? I'll just say the new Halloween 2018, there's a scene there where they're talking about Laurie Strode and the trauma. When the kids are walking to school in the morning, And this kid's like, you know, he only killed 5 people and he stabbed. It really wasn't that bad. Like, we've all had that thoughts about something. Like, man, was it really that bad though compared to what some of these other people have gone through? Like, but that's where we're at. Like that constant one-uppance of, and you don't think that doesn't get into these serial killers' minds too. What do I have to do now to be infamous myself? Because the bar is set so much. That's really disturbing. I can't even say that without, like, the bar is set that much higher.
In their minds. You're not speaking for yourself. I mean, it's true. There's got to be, like we discussed, there's a sense of pride and hubris about this. Like, part of it is the need, feeding that need, the compulsion, and part of it is like anybody does anything, right? I want to be an artist. I want to be the best artist I can be. I want to be the best there is. An athlete wants to be the best, baseball player. If you're killing, you want to be the best at that, I'm pretty sure. So it's not, it's not wrong to say. I'm sure that's what goes through their minds.
No, it's just an uncomfortable thing to say, when you're not a sociopath or a serial killer. Like, what the hell do I have to do next to get there? Vance, let's talk about your guy. Because this is the sad part about this, and I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. Vance, can you just tell the story about the connection between you and our next killer?
Yeah, I'll go to the best of my recollection. And of course, when certain events happen, we don't journal it prior to an event happening, if you know what I mean. So then we have to rely entirely on our memory and try to narrow it down from there. But back in what I believed was it was 1976, and I was a preteen. And of course, back then, there was no internet, so schools had sent home booklets with names and addresses of the student body as well as the staff to get in contact with them outside of school hours and over the summer break period. And it was on the summer break period that book had my name and address in it, and I had received a birthday invitation from a fellow classmate that lived within the neighborhood. And I remember that some of the details to the invitation was, it was a birthday party and it was a pool party and there was entertainment and prizes and games. And I was told no by my mother to go to this party. Now, she had her reasons why. I don't know that I would get into the personal reasons as to why. Not that that really matters at all. My point is, she had her reasons to say no, and I was unclear at that time why, other than, well, you're just being mean to me. But this isn't about me. This was about the event that transpired. And she said, no, you're not doing this birthday party. It was after the fact. And of course, as a kid, you feel like you're missing out on the big event of the world, right? You don't have a grasp for reality and humanity in the world, that other events are much bigger. But as a kid, this birthday party, that was the center of the universe, and I'm missing out on it. And so I had a grudge, needless to say. And I'm sure as parents, we all remember those days, as your childhood, as well as you now having to be the carrier of the hammer to throw those rules down as well. But I do remember after the fact of the party, that part of the entertainment was Pogo the Clown. And it stuck with me, and it was talked about for a period of time, but it was, I believe, 2 years later, maybe not quite 2 years, but in 1978, the news story broke here in Chicago of Pogo the Clown was actually John Wayne Gacy, a notorious serial killer of 33 young men and boys that were a little bit older than me, but not by much. I probably would have fell within that vein of it. John Wayne Gacy was a contractor, and that's how he lured in most of his victims was through his business. He was offering to pay. A lot of these victims were runaways or homeless or kids that had emotional problems and had no ties to their family, came from out of state. Some lived here in the Chicago metro area. Now, John Wayne Gacy, his home at the time was approximately about 5 miles as the crow flies from where I grew up at, which would have brought him right into that vicinity of being at that birthday party as Pogo the Clown. And this is what he did on the side. Besides being entertaining as a clown and also as a contractor, he also was part of, and this is for no political vice whatsoever, but he was also an advocate for the Democrat Party in the local area and within Chicago, and he was a voice, and being a contractor, he had a little bit of clout behind him to push certain names in the Democratic Party. So he was very social and made himself known, but this murder spree that he was on was strictly motivated, I think, by pure, what that word is, eroticism, perhaps. His wife, of course, I say his wife, he was married, he had 2 children of his own. His wife picked up on certain things that didn't quite seem right, and she found magazines that were hidden that were of homosexual related, certain things that he would say, the lack of closeness in a husband-wife relationship, and she started to see red flags but couldn't pin things together, but noticed that his activities to the crawl space was very frequent, and he kept bringing bags of lime down into the crawl space to help decompose the bodies, and he told her, you know, this is just a sewer leak, and that's where the smell's coming from. I got to put more lye down there. He actually had a pest control person come out into the crawl space. Now, he had buried the bodies in the crawl space, and the pest control just saw tons of bugs in the crawl space that were probably consuming the bodies naturally, and figured extermination would be the best way. And he was just an absolute monster that way. But we'll take a minute here to listen to a news clip from, at that time, Chicago news anchor Joel Daly.
Criminal courtroom where began the largest mass murder trial in this nation's history.
The murder trial of John Gacy did indeed get underway today with opening statements from the prosecution and the defense. Vivian Rosenberg is covering the trial.
Security was tight at court today, and some people coming in had more than a passing interest in the case.
Well, my feelings, I'd like to see them, do something to him besides put him in a, institution. I'd like to see him be, killed, if I get my feelings to say.
Prosecutor Robert Egan named Mrs. Wood's son along with all of Gacy's other victims as he opened for the state. Egan described Gacy as rational, premeditated, and evil, who killed his victims like flies when they got in his way. Carefully planned murders that resulted in bodies and bodies and bodies, day after day after day. Defense attorney Robert Mata countered to the jury that by any standards, Gacy is insane. He sleeps with corpses in a house where bodies have been buried for years. Can that be normal? What kind of a mind is that? The defense will show Gacy is deeply ill. Testimony in this case will begin tomorrow morning. It's expected that the prosecution will call as its first witness one of the family members of one of the victims. Vivian.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. But anyway, I do remember that when the entire news story did break on Chicago television, it immediately went worldwide, but it was certainly national news at that time, and it was the big story as this notorious serial killer. He lived so close. It's more terrifying because he was right there within the neighborhood. But the story had broke, and I do remember, and I don't say this, in a humorous way, but I do remember Dad put myself and Mom in the family truckster, and we drove over there to the location. And being that, there were TV cameras there at the time that was breaking the story, and I don't believe it was the same day, but we did drive past that area, and it was crazy because I specifically remember seeing City of Chicago police cars that were parked along the side of the street in front of the house there. There were backhoes that were out in front of the property that was digging up in the front yard. And I believe the reason why the City of Chicago got involved is just because they had a bigger task force to help out the City of Des Plaines. Now, this was unincorporated City of Des Plaines, and it was known as Norwood Park, where he was at, but it's still under the guise of the City of Des Plaines, which is a very large metropolitan city outside of Chicago, and it actually borders O'Hare Airport. So to say it's a quiet, quaint little neighborhood, no, this was suburbia, house within house within house, and all this activity was taking place in and around his property. And I remember sitting in the family truckster, which was a station wagon, by the way, and remember seeing those Chicago police cars parked out there. There was a plethora of people. There were other cars out there, being the spectators as well as we were. We were not innocent by any means. We were, seeking glorification to see the actual site where these bodies were found. And as a kid, I don't know that I would have done that, other than it's just curiosity. Fortunately, John Wayne Gacy was captured and taken into captivity instead of, being loose and missing somewhere. So there was a little bit of closure that the killer was captured. But, it just painted a really dark stain on the area for many years. And still to this day, when you talk about serial killers in this metro area, John Wayne Gacy's name is the first one to come up on the list, just because it was so heinous. And like I said, I think his greatest eroticism to killing was through asphyxiation and strangulation, and I think that was his pinnacle of what he found the most joy in, was taking a life that way, and then to bury them in the crawl space. And of course, he ran out of room in the crawl space and buried some on the property itself, and then disposed some of the bodies into the Des Plaines River. So he was running out of room, and fortunately, he was captured. To say unfortunately, he was not captured soon enough, and these transient boys, young men and boys, had lost their life. And still to this day, our thoughts and prayers go out to the mothers and the fathers of these children that were taken at such an early age, and it still rates pain with them. I see interviews from time to time of, parents, and it's horrifying. It really is horrifying, but I have to look back on it now to say thank you to my mother for not letting me go to that birthday party, because I'm not sure I would have been okay rubbing shoulders with somebody like that. And like in the very beginning of this episode, we will all come in contact with somebody who has murdered somebody at some point in our life, and it'll happen more than once, and that's terrifying within itself. But to do it deliberately, no, I would stay away from that. I just didn't want to have that brush of a person like that in that close proximity to me. And who's to say that I couldn't have been one of the next victims? And I don't say that because I'm looking for the sympathy of it. I'm just saying, hey, the possibility was out there. I wasn't that far out of his age bracket that he was targeting, and probably that's why he would do birthday parties and look for his next victims through that scope. So yeah, that was terrifying. But
Vance, that's just, I can't believe it, dude. Like, you could have almost been a victim of Gacy.
could have been. Fortunately, like I said, again, I thank Mom for her discretion. Not that she knew who this person was. She had an entirely different reason for me not to be going to this party. But I look back on it now, and I'm rather grateful of it, because I just didn't want that to brush shoulders with somebody like that. I'd still be taking a shower to try to cleanse that.
Well, that's the thing, right? You wouldn't have known until it was, well, not you per se, but it was too late. And just imagine how I couldn't imagine like being in Chicago at that time, being a young male myself. Anyhow, like, how old were you then?
I was, preteen, so I kind of would have been within the ballpark.
I was going to say you're right in his wheelhouse, which is even more disturbing. Seriously, I mean, I'm not even making light of it.
No.
I said when I promoted this show that you had a almost a personal connection with one of these, and
that's a good way to promote it. Personal connection with a serial killer. Yeah. Who's his daddy?
But it's just alarming, and I'm just glad you didn't make it to that party. But John Wayne Gacy, that's big news. I think he's one of the most infamous serial killers that we have. Like, if you put the names up there, you've got Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Ed Kemper, Ted Bundy.
All due respect to Kemper, I think before Mindhunter, I wouldn't even have him there. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people that probably don't know him, but so we're doing the Mount Rushmore. He's like, we don't want to put these guys on pedestals, but we'll put them on the side of a friggin' cliff. Well, so we got Gacy.
But society does that. You know what I mean? Like, of course, I'm sure Ranker's got a top 10 of serial killers out there somewhere.
There's a Reddit thread.
There you go.
No, I don't know if there is, but I'm sure there probably is.
That's because people need to really get a better hobby.
So, guys, if we had to frame this final thought around serial killers, and this is only one of many episodes to come, because I'm sure we'll do individual episodes on specific crime and specific ordeals. What do you thought? What did you learn anything going into this, or learn anything from this that you didn't know going into it?
Well, I took a look at things from an empath point of view.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different than I've done in the past thinking about it. So I'm taking an entirely different approach to the subject altogether, because I'm kind of burned out on taking a look at it of going, wow, this is just horrifying. And it's awe-inspiring to know that there's people out there that can actually do this to other people and take it away from the entire spectrum of popularity, but take a look at it from a different angle. And that's really what I did this time around, at least trying to talk about some of these insane people. And I will say that's exactly what it is. It's insane. It is absolutely insane.
No doubt about it. I have no questions regarding any of their sanity. I think they're fully aware of what they did. I just don't think they either cared or they wanted to do something different. And I think that's what made it different going me into. You said more of an empathic point of view. I looked at it more as like a psychological point of view. Like, at any time, these guys could have stopped what they did and moved on and went on to something different, but they chose to continue to do this. Right. There was a drive there, and whatever that drive is, one day maybe we'll find out so we can stop it from someone else. Maz Baker, what do you got?
Well, some of them, I do believe the fact that they didn't get caught right away. Like, the first couple were just, oh, wow, I could do this, or it just happened. Then eventually, like, a lot of them taunted the police, were like, I'm being this evil and you can do nothing, and I think that was the biggest problem with a lot of them, was they weren't getting, they weren't getting caught, or eventually they started to, like, were getting slight recognition and then goes, oh, wait a minute, I can get so much more. It's kind of like the, I always go back to the movie with Mickey and Mallory. As they got bigger, they did bigger things because that got more attention.
Natural born killers.
Yeah.
I have a couple of thoughts. I think that what makes a killer compelled to kill is no different than what makes a gambler gamble or somebody who's overweight eat. I just think, unfortunately, it manifests itself in killing. It's a need, it's a high, and once people get a taste of that, they want to keep doing it over and over again. And again, that's not an excuse for anything, because we all need to fight our own addictions or our own cravings or obsessions or passions, especially when they affect other people like that. It's a mental sickness, and people do need help, but at the same rate, it's a question of right and wrong, and I do think a lot of them do know what's right and what's wrong, even if they try to admit or state that they don't. And I also think it's important to talk about these things, even if they're uncomfortable, and some people may feel like it glorifies them and puts them in the spotlight. We have to remember the people that were lost, and we have to keep these kind of subjects alive so that we can hopefully cut down on this from continuing, and the people that are doing it getting the help they need before they continue doing it, or more killers are created and saving lives.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. You don't continue talking about these to glorify the killers. You do it in remembrance of the victim so it can stop it potentially from ever happening again. And I think that's probably the best note we can leave this program on. Maz, where can folks find you?
Right now, or just in general? Because I think that would be counterintuitive to what we're trying to talk about.
Where can they find you online?
Oh boy, let's see if I can remember. I'm on Instagram at Maz Adams Art. I'm on Facebook under Maz Adams. You can find me on Facebook. My page is The Art of Maz Adams. MazAdamsArt.com. I draw a lot. I was drawing this whole time, honestly.
Yes, he's been a busy guy.
I know. Sometimes I apologize. Thank you for calling me a guy. I appreciate it.
Whatever you choose to be, it's the 21st century. I'm okay with all. Baker, where can folks find you?
Where can we find you, Baker?
Where can we find you, Baker? Where are you at?
Usually, when you're looking for Sean, I'm not that far behind.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't pick up a penny, Sean.
I'm on Facebook, and I don't have one of them Twitter deals because, nobody needs to know my random thoughts every 5 minutes, trust me. But yeah, basically that's that, or SuperNRML page, I'm probably on there somewhere.
Absolutely. Vance, let them have it.
Where people can find me, currently I'm on vacation visiting my favorite other planet, which is Earth.
Well, there you go.
Otherwise, I'm at home on my own planet. But no, you can find me on Facebook, Vance A. Nesbitt, or Instagram, Vance_Nesbitt_NRML.
Folks, I'm Sean Forker. You can find me everywhere. I'm my name, at Sean Forker, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can go to our website, SuperNRML.com, to connect with us there. On our Facebook page, the SuperNRML Cast. Email us, supernormalcast@gmail.com. But folks, find us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Pod Addict, Cast FM, Castbox, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're everywhere. We're on YouTube. Find us, rate, and review. It's very important that you do that because we need to know how we're doing for you. We do this show for you, the listeners, and though it's been sporadic, we're going to get back into it once again. So thanks for listening tonight, folks. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thank you for coming along to this week's event. Remember, if by chance you get an odd feeling and something doesn't seem right, don't be alarmed by it. It's just the supernormal.